Welcome to the Data Room, where we share best practices and actionable tips on being a data-driven company, or as we call it, data first. If you're a B2B revenue leader looking to scale your growth stage business, come and join experienced CEO and tech founder Scott Stouffer in the Data Room. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Data Room. I'm here with scaleMatters CEO and co-founder Scott Stouffer. Today, we're going to focus completely on companies in the midst of raising their Series A funding, or maybe even companies that, you've just completed your Series A round. And Scott, I know you've worked with many companies that have successfully raised their Series A financing. It's often a overwhelming time when you've got, that influx of funding, and investors will often ask CEOs at this stage what their plan of attack is with that investment. And I think it's obviously a good plan to have kind of like a first 100 days of after getting your Series A. Having that plan of attack is really important. So let's talk about that today. In your experience, what are some of those common priorities in a 100-day plan post-Series A that a CEO should include? And do you think, and maybe why, do you feel that RevOps should make that cut?
Yeah, good question. So a company's top priorities shortly after having received a Series A fundraise largely depends on what is deemed strategically important, right, to accomplish with the new capital. But it's very common that Series A money comes in specifically to help a company begin to transition from a founder-led approach to new customer acquisition to a more institutionalized approach to acquiring customers. And we often talk about this as building an effective go-to-market engine or a go-to-market motion. That is typically, though not always, the primary strategic goal of Series A funding. So in the old days, that used to mean building out a sales staff. And to some extent, if you're a company that's focused on selling big ticket items to large enterprises, maybe in a specific vertical, where human touch and relationships matter, it may still make sense to prioritize building out a team of experienced salespeople with useful Rolodexes and perhaps support that team with a sales engineer or two. Today, though, in all but the largest enterprises, buying and selling works a lot differently. Much of the buyer journey is manifested digitally, and the degree to which there is a sales motion, it's typically an inside sales motions with interactions taking place over Zoom or equivalent. So for companies with a sales motion, an optimized go-to-market engine requires a balance of demand gen expertise, selling expertise, and enabling technology. And this is where RevOps comes in. Okay. The enabling technology to support the sellers and marketers is sophisticated and complex, and it includes things like CRM, marketing automation, sales acceleration, conversation intelligence, and so on. RevOps is the function that implements and maintains the tech so that it actually delivers on its promise, effectively making the jobs of the sellers and marketers much more efficient. But RevOps done right also turns the tech stack into a strategic asset because it then delivers actionable data and insights to the revenue leaders that allow them effectively to optimize their go-to-market engine much more quickly than they'd otherwise be able to do because they're able to manage it with a lot more precision. So I'd say since go-to-market execution is typically the primary strategic goal of Series A companies, then the 100-day plan after Series A fundraise should definitely include ensuring that you have the leaders of the demand gen and sales functions that are capable of taking you to the next level, but also that you have an experienced RevOps leader or RevOps partner that can make sure that the go-to-market tech and data infrastructure are actually put in a way that are accelerators of the sales and marketing efforts rather than inhibitors. And without this, the investments in demand gen and sales will definitely underperform. So it's kind of equal priority to right sales leadership, right demand gen leadership, right RevOps leadership or partner.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, there's so many things that are happening once you do raise a Series A lot of things to put in motion. Obviously, it's a moment of excitement and your validation even. And those competing priorities that you mentioned, so sales team, product, engineering people, administrative people even, that technology stack, that was important. Are there any risks or consequences of putting some of those other priorities ahead of investing in revenue operations at this stage? And if so, what are those kind of risks or consequences?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about it, a go-to-market engine really has three legs to the stool, right? It's demand gen, it's sales, provided your business has a sales motion, and then it's the back office or the tech and infrastructure. And so all of them are necessary. All of them each of them on their own are insufficient. So if you prioritize two over the other one, it's not going to work. I mean, as I mentioned, without investing in the supporting tech and the RevOps folks necessary to implement and maintain the tech, you're essentially asking your sales and marketing people to perform their craft without giving them the modern tools to do that. And best case, it just makes them inefficient. So you spend a lot more money to acquire $1 of revenue or to acquire a customer than you would otherwise need to do. So interestingly, delaying the investment in RevOps often actually costs you more money in total than if the RevOps investment was made up front. But the real risk from my perspective in delaying kind of RevOps and tech investment is that it actually puts companies at a competitive disadvantage, especially if they're competing against companies that have more scale. Companies that have the right go-to-market tech and data infrastructure are definitely able to manage with kind of surgical-like precision. They're much better at understanding precisely their ICP and how to implement demand gen initiatives that attract that ICP. They're much better at tuning their messaging so that their pitch always resonates with the prospective buyers. And they're also much better at kind of finding and eliminating these destructive friction points in the overall lead to deal process. I guess in essence, the people that have a fulsome go-to-market tech and data infrastructure are easily in a position to outcompete those companies that don't. So to me, the risk of delaying RevOps investment is really existential. It's about survival or not, particularly if you've got better resourced competitors.
Yeah, as I say with many things, pay for it now or pay for it later. So in this case, that investing in RevOps early or at the same time building that stool or that triangle really makes sense there. And I think we've established a little bit these 100-day priorities and the case for building revenue operations in that time period. I'd love to get a little more specific about skill sets and what types of skills executives should be looking for, and maybe what options are there to build RevOps when you raise a Series A, knowing that you're still kind of early stage, right? So you may not have the ability or the budget for specialization.
Yeah, this is challenging. One, because RevOps, the recognition of RevOps as so foundational to having an effective go-to-market engine has gotten pretty broad these days. So there's just a very high demand for that function, which makes it very hard to hire people that aren't super expensive. And it makes it very challenging because most Series A companies are really not comfortable making the necessary investment to build a fully functional go-to-market tech and data infrastructure and the associated RevOps function in-house. So let me give you an example. For a typical company, maybe with, say, 10 combined sales reps and or SDRs, they should probably be spending around $70K a year just on the core tech stack, maybe another $30K or so on BI analytics stuff, probably $150K on a rock star tech administrator who is really experienced at gluing all the pieces of the tech stack together in a way that they really hum, and maybe another $50K on a part-time business analyst who can actually turn data into actionable insights for the C-level revenue leaders. So that we're talking about $300,000 a year.
Yeah, right off the bat.
Yeah. By the time you get to maybe 25 combined sales or SDR reps, you're probably closer to $450K to build this proper back office or infrastructure. And even though the return would likely be worth it, most of the companies at this stage are just sort of unwilling to make this kind of investment. And mostly because the founders are inexperienced, especially around what it takes to build a highly functioning go-to-market motion today, right? If you think about a lot of first-time founders, maybe are technologists, or maybe they were in the sales and marketing world, but not at a particularly senior level, et cetera. So they don't kind of understand what it takes to do this right. And then if someone gives them the price tag to do it right, it's eye-opening, and people are uncomfortable with that. So, typically we see Series A companies, invest in some of the recommended core tech stack, like they'll invest in a CRM, they'll invest in a marketing automation platform, but then, and we've spoken about this before, they effectively put the burden of implementing those tools and maintaining them. They put that burden on the sales and marketing leaders. And then maybe once those people say, look, this is taking too much of my time away from doing my real job, maybe they hire some inexperienced person or promote somebody internally to oversee the tech stack. And the problem with this, and this is super common, but nearly 100% of the time companies go down this path, the tech does not get implemented properly. The data in the CRM is garbage, and the infrastructure actually becomes this inhibitor rather than accelerator of customer acquisition. And this is actually a very big reason why so many Series A companies actually fail to grow at the required pace in order to ever achieve Series B. So, as I said earlier, under-investing in RevOps and go-to-market infrastructure at this stage, it really is taking an existential risk, and it's expensive. But now, the good news is there is actually an emerging class of companies that provide RevOps as a service, and because they're able to allocate resources across multiple companies and do that at scale, they're actually in a position to provide early-stage companies with a very fulsome RevOps capability at a much lower cost than if they were to build it themselves. And typically, they can deliver value much quicker as well because they use kind of templated patterns that they've put in at their other businesses. So in some cases, these RevOps as a service providers have also developed their own technology around data and analytics, and that drives even more value for these early stage companies beyond what they would get if they tried to build the function in-house. So assuming that you want to avoid kind of the existential risk of underinvesting in RevOps and go-to-market tech and data infrastructure, you really have two options. One, spend the money to properly build the function in-house, or two, partner with one of these emerging managed RevOps service providers to provide you with the capabilities. And my guess is, certainly over the next few years, because this is such a rich area that we're talking about, using a managed RevOps service provider will likely become a very common, if not the predominant approach that Series A companies take to fulfilling this critical need. It's hands down lower cost and quicker time to value than building this stuff in-house.
And especially when you're in Series A mode, time is money, right? And so if you can get something up and running with the expertise of a managed RevOps service provider has, I think that's a win-win if you choose to go down that route. So, these are great tips on and insights into what it takes to build that 100-day plan right out of the gate. If you are, well on your way to raising your Series A, well, good luck with that, and hopefully you can use these tips. And if you've just raised yours, congrats, and now you get to implement this 100-day plan, right? And if you are thinking about kind of implementing RevOps into your 100-day plan and you need some guidance, check out scaleMatters.com/assessment. As you know, we are offering a complimentary RevOps maturity assessment for listeners of this podcast. So check out scaleMatters.com/assessment. Thanks, Scott, always for your insight and advice, and we'll see you next time on the Data Room.
Thank you.